You are listening to Terra Signals, presented by Normal Paranormal. I am your host, Justin Bamforth. Returning to the show tonight is Michaela, who has some follow-up experiences to share with you since you last heard from her. And to those of you who haven't listened to that episode, I encourage you to go check that one out first. It's titled Premonitions and Warnings. And one such premonition that Michaela had in particular in Maui transformed her life. In fact, it was just days before the devastating wildfires that decimated the island, leaving a huge death toll in its wake. But Michaela is originally from the Baltimore, Maryland area, where she had a brief career in forensics with law enforcement. She was involved with several criminal investigations and collected forensic evidence from crime scenes, but she's also traveled extensively around the U.S., including Alaska and Hawaii, where she was employed full-time as a bartender aboard cruise ships. But in recent years, Michaela has put more of an emphasis on travel, specifically train travel, where she has completed 2 coast-to-coast journeys by train thus far, and maybe even more. But all of these experiences have taught her now how to have a life-is-short mindset, which of course we're going to jump right into here. So Michaela, my friend, welcome back to Terra Signals.
It is wonderful to be back. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, now you mentioned to me before we started recording that today, this very day, 1 year ago exactly, in 2023, was your last day spent in Maui before the fires, correct?
Yes, it was. I checked my Facebook memories today and saw a bunch of pictures around Lahaina and realized, wow, a year ago today was my last day there.
Wow, that's amazing. And today we are recording this follow-up episode. Is it a
hmm
coincidence? A synchronicity? What do you think?
I don't even, nowadays, I don't even think I believe in coincidence.
Mm.
I think just about everything has a little bit of a synchronicity side to it.
Yeah, this phenomenon is so puzzling, so fascinating, and yet so frustrating. But you've had a sort of like an awakening, an unlocking. What would you call it over these last few months?
Oh man, I would say an awakening. Um, not I guess I'm not fully awake yet. I don't think I'll ever be yet, but it's definitely started a journey for me. That is for sure. I've realized a lot of things the past few months that have really just transformed my life.
Wow. Okay, so let's start right there because I received a message from you several months after we had recorded the episode, and you had mentioned this moldavite type of crystal, a pendant. What was it?
Yeah, so I had turned 30 in June and I was gifted a Moldavite pendant and I never really believed or leaned into the whole crystal thing up until this and I all of my doubts about a lot of things are gone now.
How did you come into possession of this moldavite pendant? Like, what was the backstory here?
I was at work and I work in the service industry. And I had a customer come a few times, met him I think I met him maybe twice before he had gifted me this pendant, and, me and him just had the very same mindset. At first, he was kind of like I almost got the vibe that this guy's a little off, but then I talked to him, I'm like, "Whoa, this guy thinks exactly like me." So um, third time I met him was right after my birthday, and he said, "I have a gift for you." And it was this beautiful Moldavite pendant with, I believe, a fire opal on top as well. Um, and I was like, wow, this is a beautiful gift to give to someone that you have met 3 times now. Um, but yeah, that's how I got it.
Wow. So this stranger comes into the store. You hit it off with them. Let me ask you this, because we hear about this occasionally in this field. People will come into our life. Well, I shouldn't say occasionally. This happens a lot. Uh, People come into our lives at seemingly just the right time, just the right moment, under just the right circumstances, and it just changes our whole life, our whole trajectory in life.
Yes. And that is exactly what happened here, and it was just the least expected thing I could have ever guessed would happen in my life.
Did he have a reason? Obviously, he wanted to give it to you, but did anyone encourage him to buy this pendant, or did he, like, inherit it, or how did he get it?
So he told me that he was at a shop one day and saw Moldavite, learned about it, and wanted to buy a piece for himself. And there was a pendant right next to that piece. And apparently, these pieces were found right next to each other in the Czech Republic. And so he's like, I have no idea who I'm buying this for, but I'm buying it for someone. So he bought it. And this was months before I had even met him. And, so I don't know, he doesn't even know why he gave it to me. He just kind of knew, like, something just told him, like, "This is meant for her."
Huh, but he didn't know who her was.
Exactly, at the time when he bought it, he had no idea who he was buying it for. He just knew for some reason he was meant to buy it.
Huh. Did he what was the feeling that he got when he was holding this Moldavite?
So he, experienced the Moldavite flush, the same thing I did. That's actually a term. And cause he asked me when he first handed it to me, "How do you feel holding this?" And I was like, energized, excited, I guess. It was very, almost like a little tiny electric current in your hand. And he said he felt the same way when he held his.
Did any of you feel nauseous while holding this, or unsettled, or I don't
Um,
know, in a fog, or
Neither of us did, but he's tried to give it to other people, and other people have felt nauseous or sick when they've held it. And I've even, after it was gifted to me, I've let people hold it. And a lot of people, I even had one friend just run to the bathroom and, vomit because it was so intense.
I don't know much about crystals. Uh, I know our now mutual friends, Marty and Marcia, who I introduced you to. They're the crystal experts. You reached out to them at some point, and we'll get into that later. But was there any insight about Moldavite that they gave you, or that you found out on your own?
I did a lot of research because at first, when he gave it to me, he was kind of like, "This is Moldavite, read about it, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "Okay." So after work that night, I did. And, um, and a lot of what I learned, Marty confirmed when I talked to her, but basically a it's a stone that's not from this earth. It's a mineral that is not of this planet. It came from a meteorite 15 million years ago, I believe, that um, crashed in the area of the Czech Republic or Austria. And so that's the only place that it's found. It's in limited supply, and it's just a very unique crystal. I've never felt anything holding, amethyst or rose quartz or any of that. But the second I held this, it was just like just a surge of energy.
That's really fascinating because when most people hold on to a crystal or a stone, or just a trinket, piece of jewelry, whatever, they don't have that reaction. It looks cool, it feels cool, it may sparkle, but to have something cause a physical sensation, that's wild.
Yeah, like I know people can have, some sort of sentimental or emotional attachment to a crystal or something that might make them feel that way, but I had never heard of Moldavite before. I'm getting this from a dude I met twice at this point, and all of a sudden it's just the most like energetic thing I've ever held.
Did you know a lot about him before he gave you this, or and the reason I ask is, I'm trying to see if there's any, like, mysterious backstory here with this
Yeah,
gentleman.
so he actually has a very interesting backstory. So I live in North Carolina now, and he grew up in the South, in a very strict Jehovah's Witness family. One of 9 kids, not a great family unit, and so he learned a lot of attitudes and behaviors that, you know, aren't kind according to, based on organized religion. Jehovah's Witness, very strict. I'm not trying to bash any religion, but I personally believe that almost every organized religion has some sort of flaw to it. But he grew out of that. He unlearned it all, and he moved to North Carolina from Georgia and just started a new life kind of. And he has this house that he's built from scratch. I'm not gonna lie, when I met him, I was like, this guy kind of reminds me of Jesus. Like the actual, like, he's a carpenter, he builds things. He just loves everyone. People disagree with him because of the way he sees the world, but it's the loving way to see the world, if that makes sense. And people dislike Jesus for the same reason. So, in the earlier episode we talked about me going to Catholic school, and so I kind of like made that comparison right away.
Hmm. Hey, look, that's an ideal uh, trait to have in a partner, right? So it's like
Yeah, yeah,
it's
and
not a
that's
bad thing,
definitely not a negative thing.
right? No, that's great. He's not trying to get you to join a cult, is he?
You know what? Not that I know of yet,
All
unless
right,
that
that's good.
cult is cooking amazing steaks because he does that very well.
Hey, there you go. He cooks some divine steaks.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So you met this guy, you got this pendant, you're attached to this Moldavite. Were there any other experiences with the Moldavite that you had?
So, when I first started wearing it, I wore it for about 3 days on and off, and when I started wearing it in public, especially at work, um, as we talked about, I've always been kind of sensitive to other people's, I guess, emotions, feelings, and just feeling them out as a person. It became 10 times stronger when I started wearing the Moldavite.
When you mean stronger, stronger in what way? What was the sensation you picked up?
So we talked about how last time how a lot of empaths they'll walk into a room and feel how people are feeling, and it's draining, and you can just feel other people's energies. I felt that my whole life, but after the Moldavite it was like if I got close to a person, it's like I could, without even talking to them, just know how they're feeling, what kind of mood they're in, why they're here in the building in the first place. I mean, there was, I briefly told you in the email that I had a very negative feeling around one of my managers at my old job after I started wearing this Moldavite, and I couldn't figure it out. And it got to the point where like my stomach would hurt when I was around him. And the next day, out of the blue, one of my coworkers texts me some criminal records that he is someone you don't want to leave kids around.
Oh boy.
So, yeah, so it was just wild that I felt that dark energy coming from this guy.
When you're picking up these emotions, these impressions, do you have to be physically with them in order to get it, or can those impressions come through digital means, like if you're texting somebody or messaging someone?
Oh, it definitely comes through digital means, and I guess kind of transcends distance and space because my one friend back home from Baltimore, he and I have been friends for, gosh, 18 years now. Very close, very connected, have always had these crazy synchronicities between us. And there was one time, again, I was wearing the Moldavite, and I was just in immense pain all over my body. And I couldn't figure it out, and I was crying and I was emotional and nothing had happened. I mean, I had just been sitting on the couch playing Animal Crossing. So I texted that friend and I said, "Hey, I don't know what's going on, but I'm in a lot of pain. Like, can you please just send me some of your positive energy?" And the pain lasted about 3 hours. After that 3 hours, he called me and said, "I'm so sorry. I just saw your text. I was in a funeral service for the past 3 hours."
Whoa.
Yes, so the exact time that my pain started, he entered that funeral service, and the second he left the building, my pain stopped.
Wow. That's never happened to you before.
No, not that intensely, no. Like, I've never felt someone else's physical pain like that.
And you were wearing the pendant.
Yes.
Huh. What about on the opposite end, where something pleasant come of this, like a pleasant impression?
Yes, actually. That same friend, he ended up getting a new job that was, really beneficial for him. And that day, that morning, I felt like just light as air and just happy and thrilled and positive. Not that I'm not already, but that day it was just a little more elevated. And I saw my phone and it said he got a new job and he was just doing better. So I was like, wow, that's the joy I was feeling.
When it comes with to crystals, to precious stones, we hear a lot about the need to charge them up.
Hmm.
Did Marty and Marcia talk to you about that at all?
Yes, she did. So, um, my, I guess, big awakening moment happened when my pendant was sitting on the windowsill one night. And I hadn't even realized until I talked to Marty that that night just happened to be a full moon. The night I take it off and put it on my windowsill is the night that it almost like it was calling me to pick it up and look at it so I could just learn more about myself.
So this was a full moon. You put it on your windowsill. You suddenly get the urge to pick it up, hold it to the light. It's what you had written to me.
Yes.
And you said that when you did this, you suddenly felt a rush of knowledge and a feeling you're still trying to describe. What exactly was that feeling?
It's like I was looking at something like human eyes couldn't see. Like I was, when you hold Moldavite up to the light, it's green, but it's also it has these flashes of like orange and brown and muted blues and the spectrum of light. It was so beautiful and foreign and weirdly familiar at the same time. And it was just a very overwhelming feeling that came over me. And this is the part that is still weird to say out loud because people look at you like you're crazy. And this is why I come on the podcast and don't talk in public a lot. But I suddenly just knew that my soul did not originate from Earth. And the that's the only way I can describe it, is just I just knew I knew why I was traveling so much because I was trying to find somewhere that felt like home on this planet, but I realized my home isn't this planet.
because you're getting all of these impressions from people, from surroundings, from environment. Do you think perhaps that impression was maybe the Moldavite itself speaking to you because it isn't from this earth? Maybe you're picking up that energy that the Moldavite was giving off about its origins.
That is 100% what I think. And the another very weird, uh, cool part of this too is after I kind of realized that, and after the Moldavite told me my soul did not originate from Earth, I went back to my desk and picked up the card that Corey had given me for my birthday, along with this pendant, and it was a Star Wars card, and lo and behold, it says, "In a galaxy a long, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, you were born."
Huh. Coincidence?
Yeah,
Synchronicity?
maybe a little bit of both.
Hmm. Did you share this with anyone?
I did. I ran over to my roommate at the time, who was right next to my room, and, my roommate, or former roommate now, I guess, she is very into crystals, tarot card readings, very, very connected like that. She does spells, and she's basically a practicing witch, and I, again, was never too interested in that stuff, never really, I guess, believed it. But I ran into her room and I said, "Emily, what is going on with me? Like, I feel crazy." And she's just like, "No, you're awakening. Like, I'm also not, like, my soul also didn't originate from this earth, and you're just realizing that. Congratulations. It's beautiful." I'm like, "What?" Like, this isn't my brain playing tricks on me, because I always heard of spiritual awakenings. I just didn't think they'd be this scary.
Was it really scary or was it just more, well, pardon the pun, earth shattering?
I would go with earth-shattering, I guess. I guess, not scary as in fearing what's happening next. I guess scary as in everything I thought I knew isn't necessarily true, and now my world's changed.
It really doesn't change who you are. I mean,
No, it does. In fact, it's I'm not changed. I'm still who I am, but my view of the world has changed, I would say.
did she give you any other insight that you had never heard of before? Or
Yeah, she mentioned something called a star seed, and I had never heard of that before. I did some research, and basically, it's just people like me who just realize we don't come from Earth. You know, when Earth was formed out of stardust and everything, souls formed from that stardust. Other souls formed otherwhere from other stardust and other galaxies and everything like that. And when you think about how we're so stuck in just the dimension of space and time, it makes sense that souls would be able to travel to other places and incarnate bodies and vessels on other planets. But I did looked into starseeds, and I do gotta say, the Reddit community is awful. It's a lot of people who just are they just want to belong to something, so you can tell they're forcing it, which is why I personally don't like to use the word starseed, just because I feel like it has such a kind of negative and borderline crazy connotation.
yeah, I'm right there with you. There's a lot of people who, well, remember the X Files and Mulder's poster hanging up. I want to believe
Yes.
that sums it up right there.
Yes, and I feel like there's a huge difference between forcing yourself to try to believe something and just knowing it. Because I like I said, I've never heard of any of this before. It never even thought to myself that any of this would be possible. I mean, I like thinking deeply into thoughts, but never the thought that I could, you know, my soul was not from here.
Did you share any of this starseed stuff with Corey to get his take on it?
I did. Again, didn't say the word starseed because, you know, but yeah, I said, "Hey, I kind of just had my first breakthrough with this Moldavite, and I don't think I'm from Earth." And he's like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "You knew?" He's like, "Yeah, no, you are a very powerful entity that was sent here." And I'm like, "Why does everyone else know so much more about me than me?"
I mean, that's quite a powerful thing to say. I mean,
Yeah.
it's where did he get his insight from? I mean, what's he basing it on?
So he's also, I guess, had that the same ego death spiritual awakening that I experienced and that a lot of other people have experienced. And I guess the best way to describe it is just intuition. Like the human ego is always in a constant state of doing and thinking, but the spirit is always in a state of being and knowing. And uh, since I've connected the 2, and I guess since he has, sometimes you just know things and you don't know how you know them, but you just do. I know it's a lot of this is just so hard to describe into words because how do you describe intuition?
It's just such an interesting comment for somebody to say.
Especially since again at this point I had only met the guy 3 times.
What happened next then? You have this information. What do you do with it?
At first, I just go back to sleep and say, all right, I'm going to sleep on all of that and see if I wake up and this is just a weird dream. So I did that and still felt the same way. So I went over Corey's the next day and we just kind of talked about a little bit of everything. Um, I He set up this meditation room and just kind of said, go let the universe speak to you because you're obviously here for something. You're obviously awakening for something. I can't tell you what that is. There's only one person that can, and that is, your spirit. So go meditate and see what it tells you.
Had you ever done this before? Was this new to you?
Yes, all of it was new to me. I mean, I had done like yoga and, some guided meditations on YouTube, but nothing like this.
What is a meditation room?
Well, it was just so it's a very nice dark room. And this room in particular, he has it's a big tapestry that takes up about half the wall, if not more, and it's backlit with LED lights and it's the tree of life and the moon behind it and stars and it's just beautiful. And it's dark and that's the only light showing and you just lay there on a comfy little bed and just stare at it and see what happens. No noise, no nothing, just silence and you and the moon.
What happened next is wild.
Yeah, what happened next was a the most beautiful experience of my life, and this is what really transformed me. I was laying there looking at this tapestry and just getting lost, I guess, in it, and all of a sudden it's like I started seeing things that human eyes couldn't see. It's like everywhere I looked, even though it's like I wasn't looking with my eyes, it's like I was looking with my third eye. I just saw the universe broken down into geometry and wavelengths and frequencies and sound, and I just was shown all of these things that I are just mind-blowing. And, like, I was shown laws of quantum physics that matter and energy are interchangeable, and that we are energy, and we are matter, and we can do so much with just our energy and mind. And I my whole life being in Catholic school, I've always had a very I guess kind of negative connotation of God, because I was always told God is this old man in the sky judging me. But in that moment, I was told that the earliest translation of God is I am that I am. So I am God, you are God, the trees are God. God is just all of the energy in the universe. And eh, in that moment, it's like every doubt, every fear I had in life was just gone and replaced by just peace and love and knowing that everything is going to be okay.
You were completely sober in this moment, right?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. How are you perceiving all this? Was it visual, auditory, through the third eye? How was it coming to you?
V- I guess through the third eye, I want to say it was visual, but not. It's like I was staring at the wall visually with, my human eyes, but I was seeing so much else at the same time in my head, kind of. It was yeah, it's so difficult to describe. I wish I could just, like, animate it somehow or something and, like, give a visual representation, but it's a very unique experience.
You had mentioned that you were shown this, what you said was the earliest translation of God.
So, yeah, like, if you go back and in, the Bible and Old Testament, Jehovah is the earliest, uh I guess, interpretation of God that's recorded, and they've found that it translates to "I am." Like that, like the philosophy saying, "I think, therefore I am." It's kinda the same thing.
My background is in the Christian religion, so a lot of times when I'm talking about stuff, I'll use that as my frame of reference, and I know
Mhm,
that in the Christian religion, there are several names, for God, which, goes back to Old Testament times,
mhm,
pre-Christian, right? The Jewish tradition.
mhm.
But then there's this term, Yahweh, which
Yes, Yahweh, that's it.
that's what you meant?
Yes, not Jehovah, Yahweh.
Which was at that time, it was spelled without, vowels.
Yes, because and I always when I read that and I read that you can't say it, I always thought, because I read about that years ago in school, and that you can't say Yahweh. I thought it was a rule that you couldn't, that you would get in trouble. But after this experience, I realize it's it's not that you can't say it. It's that you're not allowed to. It's that the concept of God is just so large and so unfathomable, I guess, for us to grasp, and so much bigger than everything that we know, that it's almost like you can't put God into a word.
Yeah, and it goes back to, I think it's Exodus, when, the story of Moses, where God came to Moses and said, and gave him this new name to his nature, and it was Yahweh, which, was spelled YHWH, but, which translates to, or what God said is, I am that I am. And, no one knows how to say it. it was so sacred, this name, that the Jews would not speak it because they were too afraid to speak it incorrectly. And this whole concept is referred to as I think it's called a tetragrammaton, which is the holy designation of who God was. So they would write it, but they would never speak it. And those additional vowels were added to help pronounce it better in human terms. So this became the name that we now know as Yahweh. And then when the English translation was added, Yahweh became Jehovah. Um, so there's that connection point. It's really fascinating stuff.
And it's so fascinating that so many people, like, have this connection, and I guess and just know this without kind of being influenced. Like, yes, I read about the whole Yahweh thing years and years and years ago, but I never knew that the translation was "I am that I am." I never even heard that before, and then suddenly I'm in this dark room staring at a picture of the moon, and that just comes to me.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
it's
know
pretty
and
remarkable.
so many other people have had it too, and it's just it can't be a coincidence that so many people are just knowing these same things.
Taking it down another direction, because the whole nature of this program is just to think about different possibilities, right? There's another theory that could be put forth, is that maybe you were kind of breaking into this collective consciousness where you have all of these thoughts from all of humanity over eons, of time,
Yeah.
all condensed here. And maybe you're picking up on all of those things, but maybe that creates the essence of God. I don't know. This is
Whoa.
right.
So
This is all speculation. So, and dear listener, please take all of this with a grain of salt.
Yes. Yeah, we have no one really knows 100% on it. We're not gonna know until we really do leave this earth, but for now, it is fascinating to talk about.
And it is really fascinating too when you go back and you look at the biblical concepts, right? And you study those, and that's why I put these ideas forward to you, because yeah, a lot of people, they get disillusioned. Oh, the Bible is just an old book, right? Why do I have to study that? Well, look, when you move beyond the English translation and you really get into how each book was written and the original language it was written in, then it really comes alive and it becomes deeper. And that's how you can pick up these different things, these different names for God. Because sometimes when you're reading the Bible, you don't know when they're going to mention these names. But a good rule of thumb is if it's written in all caps, as like Lord, like all spelled in all caps, then they are speaking about one of God's names there. So, as opposed to, another name for God. And there's a ton of names, but
Oh, yeah.
they all talk about his different nature. So, it's really fascinating stuff. I think this is amazing what you're experiencing,
Yeah.
because you don't have any of this knowledge. It was just, you're perceiving it.
Yeah. It's just it's just coming to me, and it's beautiful, and I was the same way with, reading the Bible. I had such a negative connotation with it being in Catholic school, and I just always felt it was taught in such a, uh, what's that word? Literal way that it I feel like in my growing up, it didn't leave any room for other interpretations, and kind of other interpretations were discouraged. And now I read it and I'm like, this could be so many things. It could be like, why narrow down just to one thinking, especially when these languages are thousands of years old and they're translated again and again and again. Why would we ever take words that could be lost in translation so literally without leaving room for interpretation?
Yeah, I always tell people, if they're ready to walk away from their faith, they're ready to walk away from organized religion. I always say to them, look, when you found a healthy church when that church allows you to ask questions,
Yes.
because that's part of the spiritual journey is asking questions. It's investigating. It's coming to different conclusions based on your journey. And everyone's journey is individual. It's unique.
Exactly.
I think what holds us back is that we try to apply our human logic to these very inhuman concepts, to these very divine concepts. And we really need to do what you just did, take a step back, quiet our own voices, and just listen to the voice of whatever's out there.
Yeah. Because in my readings and stuff throughout the past few months, where we have that connection with our spirit when we're younger. Like, when kids are young and they're remembering their past lives and stuff like that. And then as we grow in society, we're trained to have these blinders on, to think that, these so many things aren't possible. So many things are limited in this world. And we kind of just accept that as fact because society tells us to. And I think it's beautiful that so many people like myself, like a lot of people nowadays are taking those blinders off and saying there is so much more than what I have been perceiving my whole life.
Did this change the impression of your Maui experience?
Yes. So, in the last episode, we were kind of questioning what warned me, what saved me from those fires in Maui. And now I think I just kind of realized it was me. It was God. It was my high consciousness. It was my intuition. I kind of thought a possibility of I don't even know what I thought of before, but now I just know it it was me.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Like the soul can transcend space and time. So who's to say that, my future self wasn't warning my then self because she knew what would happen if I stayed.
So this gets into a concept that I've thought about for a while, and that's this concept of time travel, where the classic stereotype is that you need some sort of machine to enable time travel, and then you can do it. But then there's the other school of thought, which says, well, no, you don't. You can actually time travel using your mind, using that projection.
Yes.
Had you had any other experiences now looking back on your life that would lead you to suggest that perhaps certain moments were influenced by you from this other timeline or could have been caused by you in another timeline or did you have any other interactions, strange interactions?
I don't know that I can think of a specific off the top of my head, but I think that there have been so many times where, you know, I um I won't go in high school, for example. There are a few times where I felt like for whatever reason I'm not going to go to this party that someone invited me to because something is just telling me not to go. And then turns out, it gets busted by the cops and everyone's arrested. So I'm like, okay, cool. I avoided that. But like I feel like that little voice inside your head that tells you that you should or shouldn't do something. It's even if it's quiet, it's still always there. I kind of feel like that's us. That's our future selves warning us, "Hey, don't do that," or "Hey, do this."
That somehow intuition could be our voices from some
Yeah,
other reality, some other realm.
just making sure that we don't stray from the path that we're supposed to be on.
Puts a new spin on our protectors.
Right? I mean, what if we are our own protectors? Anything is possible. That's why I love coming on here because we just get to discuss so many possibilities and they really are endless.
Now, another interesting thing that happened to you, and this happens with a lot of experiencers, is this information download.
Yeah. So I never experienced an a information download before. I think actually, was it Marty that was on your show who talked about information downloads? Someone on your podcast, I believe, did before, and that's kind of where I heard the term. And I was like, that's so strange. How can you just like know something? But now it happens quite a bit. And sometimes it'll be about things that are just kind of random and not necessarily important. Like about a month ago, a new guy started at my job, and I don't know why. I don't know what caused me to do this, but I went up to him and I said, "Were you born in West Virginia?" And he said, "Yeah, I moved here when I was 2." And I was just like, "Okay," and walked away. And I'm like, "Why did I know that?"
And what prompted you to approach him with that?
I don't know. Now looking back, I almost think it's like me testing myself to see if I was right. I'd have no idea. I don't know.
You know, that's really interesting because a similar thing happened to me a long time ago. I was at a shopping mall and I was bored. I was there by myself and I was just like, all right, just trying to pass some time, right? There weren't any good deals in the mall that day. So I was like, whatever. So I remember I was in a food court. And at this point in my life, I was trying to be more social again. I'd gone through a divorce, and I was trying to get my life back together. And I just, I was trying to talk to more people. And I remember being in this food court, and there was just some random woman at the food court, and I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to go up to them, and I just felt I can't even tell you, I can't even remember what caused me to do this. And you mentioned like testing yourself. I felt like I was trying to test myself, trying to test my perception or my perceptive abilities. And I remember going up to this woman and saying, I feel like I've met you before. Is your name, and I forget what name I just came out, but we'll say like her name is Katie. And I said, is I feel like I've met you before. Is your name Katie? And she was shocked. And she
Wow.
looked at me and she was like, yes. And I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't prepared for that at all. And I remember going, okay. And I just walked
Yep,
away.
yeah, just okay.
Yep.
Like
Because what can
like,
you do?
yeah, what do you say after that? Like,
But that moment, like, I don't know where that came from. Maybe it was because I was in a different state of thinking. Maybe I was more receptive to thing. I really don't know, Michaela. I just
yeah,
remember having this moment, startling myself just as much as I startled her, and that was it. And
yeah.
I never tried that again.
Yeah, I haven't either, actually, because I'm just like, "What the hell?" Like, if someone came up and said that to me, I would be so freaked out.
It naturally, but that got me thinking about what we call psychic phenomenon. And maybe it doesn't quite work on command. Maybe it's just these moments that are just so sporadic and spontaneous. And when you just feel it, just do it.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely is. Like, I've never tried to force any of these little information downloads. They just come, and it's just very interesting. It's so interesting. I don't think I've had one in a few days or maybe even a week, but it's been interesting.
Yeah, and the more that you force yourself to do these things, the less likely they are to happen. It's the same thing with a concept called remote viewing. The whole thing behind remote viewing is that you're just acting as like a channel for the information to flow through.
Right.
You're not trying to interpret it. You're not trying to figure it out. You're just a conduit for the information, wherever that information is coming from, and it's just coming through you, and you're flowing that out into a pencil, a pen, whatever. It's really interesting, and to those of you who don't know what the heck I'm talking about and what is remote viewing, that's another episode for another time. But for those of you who do know what it is, you could certainly attest to it. It's an aspect of psychic abilities, but you can learn it. And sometimes I think that maybe these aspects of what we call psychic phenomenon, they're just reflections of remote viewing abilities or things like it.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
But you've had other random bits of information downloaded into your brain, right?
Yes. Um, I think one of the most interesting recent ones was I was uh, in the meditation room about to actually take a nap. I was like in that halfway in between sleep and being awake, and I got like this image of the earth in my head, and it was like there was like a magnet in the middle, and north up top, south at the bottom, negative at the bottom, positive at the top. And all of a sudden it's like it started kind of glitching, and the magnet started to go horizontally instead of vertically, and then switch completely so that north was south, south was north. And I was like, "That's weird. What does that mean?" So I went to good old Google, and sure enough, the magnetic poles are shifting of the Earth, and it's like a happens every few thousand years, I think, but it's a slow process that happens, but according to this little vision, we're almost in the middle of it.
When it comes to these information downloads, we hear a lot about it from UFO witnesses. Sometimes when they see an object or craft, or they have a more involved encounter with entities, sometimes they get these information downloads. I know we had talked about this in the first episode. Since then, had you had any other UFO or UAP related experiences?
The skies over the mountains, especially of North Carolina, are busy. I went from never seeing a true UAP or UFO, whatever you'd like to call it, with my own two eyes, to almost every week now. Yeah, and they're not crazy or big. It's just like most of it will be these little gold flashes way, 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 way up in the atmosphere. Very bright, very yellow or red or orange. And they're so high up, they're not shooting stars because they're not darting across the sky, they just flash. And then another one that I've seen a lot is almost like little satellites in the sky, just a little tiny light. And but it doesn't go in a orbital pattern like a satellite does. It'll go and then stop, and then go and then stop and then go another direction. Um, I've also seen almost what look like fighter jets up in the sky, as in like the patterns how they fly together, but they weren't. They were just kind of little round lights, I guess. Not flashing, not nothing, no noise, and they were very, very high up there too. But the most significant UAP was the Brown Mountain Lights that I saw.
Right. And to those of you who are not familiar with the Brown Mountain Lights, they're this location in North Carolina, and they've been going on for a long time.
Oh yeah. Like I mean, I think there's reports from like the 17 or 1800s even before electricity was put into the area.
How would you describe them, the Brown Mountain Lights?
So they kind of start as almost like little like red laser pointer dots, and they kind of just dance along the mountain tops at night and then like fade into the sky, almost like little, as if you were to imagine a fairy dancing around and flying around. That's kind of what they look like. Sometimes they'll be yellow, blue. I've mostly seen red. Um, and when I was there and saw them for about the first 15 minutes, that's all there was. But then, I mean, out of nowhere, it just appeared. Over one of the mountain ridges was this big, glowing orange orb. And it kind of had like, it almost looks like it plasma around it was moving. It was this illuminating glow around the orb, and it was like shifting the clouds, and it was just it left me speechless the way it looked. It legitimately looked like a wormhole.
Wow, that's remarkable. Uh,
Yeah.
had you caught any of these on video or attempted to?
No, just I just it, when it appeared, it's like I was just too stunned to even move. Like, my mouth was hanging open. I'm so surprised a bug did not fly in it. That's how stunned I was, just shock.
What do you think they are? I mean, did they seem like intelligently controlled or
It's I've read so many theories that it could possibly be, um, it to me, it feels like they are kind of like their own entities, the little red lights, but I've also read that it could be um Earth's geomagnetic field or electromagnetic field, and certain charges and certain particles will refract the light differently. So like red lights refract different, and a bunch of science I don't quite understand yet. But um I don't know. I really don't know what they could be. But if I had to guess about that big red orb or orange orb, it would be a wormhole. It looked exactly like just a glowing, rotating orb of plasma.
did you ever see anything come in or out of that wormhole?
Corey saw it better than I did, but I did see the just a little gray speck kind of fly into it very, very, very fast. And I saw it, but he said he saw a little bit more details of it, and that it kind of had like the gray dot had some sort of ring around it, according to him. I was too busy staring at the orb itself. I only vaguely saw the gray thing, but it disappeared straight into it.
What were your impressions of this when you're witnessing it?
In the moment, it was fascinating and beautiful. And then after the orb slowly disappeared over the mountaintop, that's when we both just got the sense of, "We need to get out of here." Like, we just jumped in the truck and went, and I couldn't explain to you why I felt that way. It was just, like, fear. It was just, and I hadn't felt any fear since the awakening. I've just been a very trusting in God and the universe, but that was it's like it scrambled my brain.
Scrambled in what way?
So, we get in the car and we're driving, and all of the sudden he says, "Look at me." And I look and we make eye contact and I snap out of it. And I'm like, "How long have we been driving?" And he's like, 45 minutes. Were you just in that trance too? And I'm like, "What?" It felt like we had been driving maybe 5 minutes. And throughout that entire time, again, my mouth was still open. I could not form a concrete thought. It's like it's like if someone were to take a powerful magnet and like hold it up against a computer, just scramble all of it for a minute. It's like that's how my brain felt.
During this time that you were in this, for lack of a better descriptor, this trance, were you aware of actual time? Like, was there a clock in the vehicle, or did you have a wristwatch on? Anything to keep track of the time?
The yes, so we did have a clock on the dashboard, and I I didn't look at it the most of the time we were driving because gosh, I don't even remember seeing anything that entire time, but 45 minutes had gone by the time we snapped out of this trance, and it felt like 5. It's like time just didn't time didn't feel real for a little bit.
But you weren't aware of any missing time.
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah. Oh, interesting. I never thought about that actually.
Do you know what that concept is of missing time? Have you heard of it before?
Yeah, it's a lot of people who experience abductions experience the missing time thing.
Yes, it's more commonly referred to in the abduction phenomenon, but I actually have some case reports where it's just upon seeing an object. So now, could there have been an abduction that went on? I don't know. I can't say. But yeah, that's why I ask these questions. Do you remember getting in the vehicle and driving away?
I remember getting in the truck at first. By the time I was in it's like the second I sat down, it went blank. And like it's like an hour drive from our house, and we were home in 15 minutes after this trance. So it's like how did 45 minutes just go by and it felt like 5?
And Corey experienced that as well.
Yes.
But he was the first to snap out of this trance before you, correct?
Yeah, so he said because he felt the same trance, and all of a sudden he's like he thought, if we make eye contact, we're gonna snap out of it. I don't know how he thought it or why, but he just said, "Look at me." And when we made eye contact, that's when I snapped out of it. And he just said somehow I just knew that might work.
Had Corey ever talked to you about any UFO encounters that he's had?
Um, Not that I know of. I think he's tried to see the Brown Mountain Lights before, but never had. But oh wait, no, yes, he before I came into the picture, um across from the house is this big field with a tree line, and I've actually seen these too. These kind of like fireballs just slowly moving across the sky across the field. And again, not planes, not a meteor because they're low in the atmosphere, but it's like they just glow and then dissipate across the sky. So he's seen those a bunch at his house before I showed up, and now I'm seeing them. Yeah, and if you look at North Carolina specifically, I was looking at UFO and UAP sighting reports, and For the population, North Carolina has a pretty high UFO encounter rate or UAP encounter rate compared to other places. So it's like, what's going on up here?
You had done other research into the Brown Mountain area, correct?
Yes.
What did you find?
So, well, at first I found a lot of places saying it's trains, it's electricity. First off, I don't know where there is a train track visible near Brown Mountain, but I have never seen one. And these reports were happening long before electricity was in the area. So, quickly skimmed through all of the things that were trying to explain it. Um, and I ended up coming across this author named Mary Joyce, and she wrote a book about underground military bases in the mountains of the Linville Gorge where Brown Mountain is. Yeah, so that was a very interesting rabbit hole that I almost got sucked down a little too much, but yeah.
How did she arrive at that conclusion?
So according now, a lot of her information, I will say, I'm hesitant and skeptical about. Um, but she's had uh whistleblowers essentially come to her, and has eyewitnesses who have said that they have seen things like, the side of certain mountains in North Carolina open up and a tank just drive in, and then the side of the mountain shuts. And I even know someone, a local here, who I was talking to, who said that one time he saw a plane flying through the mountains and it went down into this valley and just never came back up. And he's like, I saw the whole valley. I saw it just disappeared. And there have been a lot of kind of things like that in my research. And she also talked about the brain scramble that I felt. She described it kind of exactly. And um, she claims that this is a man made frequency that some of these uh, operations might be putting out so people don't go near the area or people don't want to investigate and see more of the lights or UAPs or whatever.
What do you think?
I'm conflicted, but I if it was true, I would on 1000% not be shocked because um there were claims that there is a uh big base under Mount Mitchell, which is the highest point on the East Coast, tallest mountain in North Carolina. And I had went there recently. And when you're in the woods and you're hiking, there's going to be, and especially in the summertime in North Carolina, there's going to be the sounds of bugs and birds and animals and critters and all of that. This entire mountain was silent as can be. And it wasn't an intense brain scramble, but it was a very, very eerie feeling that there was just something not right going on. I don't know quite how to explain it. And then of course the no animal sound also happened at Brown Mountain once the whole brain scramble thing happened as well. So I believe it's the same sort of frequency that makes the bugs and the animals silent that makes the brain scramble happen.
I mean, we're getting into some dangerous topics.
Yeah, I was actually wondering, I'm like, should I have even put this on the podcast? Like,
No,
uh,
it's fine. Yeah, you can share whatever you want on this show. But nevertheless, it is dangerous, because
yeah,
if this is true, what does that mean, right? Like, what does that imply?
exactly. And like I mentioned in when I was messaging you, when I was researching a lot of this, the breaker for my room kept going off, the power breaker, and the Wi-Fi router was in my room. And that has never, ever happened before. Didn't have a bunch of electronics plugged in, nothing. But every time I would try to Google this topic on my laptop with my Wi Fi connected, the breaker would switch.
Since you've been visiting the Brown Mountain area and pursuing this, have you had any encounters with anybody in official capacity or even in an unofficial capacity?
So far, no. Um, Corey and I kind of both thought that after we had seen the big orb, we kind of both thought that we were going to be visited by someone after that. Because I've read about Men in Black and that kind of stuff. Not like the movie Men in Black, but are the regular ones, and how sometimes after a UFO or UAP encounter, these strange people pop up. And I was kind of cautious about that at first, and kind of on the lookout. But so far, knock on wood, no one yet.
Yeah, and who believes in that stuff anyways, right?
Oh yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, it is, with all in all seriousness, yes, this is an aspect that goes on. It's interesting. It doesn't always happen after an encounter or an experience, but occasionally it does. So that's why I ask these questions. You never know.
Yeah, definitely.
Has anything else weird taken place that you want to talk about?
Oh man, give me a minute to think about this.
I know there's a
'Cause
lot.
there is, and I don't want to ramble too much or sound even more off my rocker than I feel like I do. I know I'm not crazy. I know coming on this podcast is very like reassuring because I know the people listening to this are hopefully just as open-minded about all of the possibilities of things that we are. So,
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think all of this means? What's the point? Why you? And why now?
that's a great question. That's a really great question. I think because, you know, the overall message that I've been receiving throughout all of this is that there's an imbalance of positive or positive and negative energy on Earth. And there's an imbalance of good and bad right now. And everything I've been taught or shown has just had the essence of just be a loving person. Just love. Just love your neighbor, love yourself, take care of yourself, and that is going to have an effect. The positive energy that you put out into the universe, you're going to get back. And maybe I'm just being shown all this just to tell people, just so they can, be a little more loving in their everyday life too.
Fascinating stuff, Michaela. Fascinating stuff. And I thank you again for coming on to the show a second time, taking the time to talk about your experiences more and share some of these great encounters with the audience. So, to those of you who listening, I hope this episode encourages you or others you may know who may have had similar experiences to step forward and share your tale. So, in fact, if you yourself have a story, please get in touch with me by sending an email to info@terrasignals.com. I'd love to hear directly from you and what you thought about this episode.
And if anyone does message you, please let me know because I would love to hear if other people have some similar experiences and if anyone else has also seen the Brown Mountain Lights because surprisingly a lot of locals here haven't. So I'm really curious to see if anyone else has some stories.
How far are you from the Brown Mountain Lights?
About 1 hour of a drive.
Wow, that's not far at all.
Yeah, so I'm right at the mountains and it's yeah, a very beautiful area, but also very mysterious. And I think it's interesting that all of this is occurring on one of the oldest mountain chains in the world.
Wow, amazing stuff. Well, now you are the official Terra Signals Brown Mountain Lights correspondent
Woo!
right here. You are our boots on the ground for any strange happenings that may take place out there. And keep your eyes peeled and keep your radar up, because there's a lot of high strangeness that goes on beyond the experience. And to those of you listening, if you have had an encounter with something strange, don't get so obsessed and focused on the encounter or the experience itself. Keep an eye on what happens after, because sometimes it's in those moments, long after the experience has taken place, that leave little clues to help us better understand what this means and what triggers it, and why certain people seem to be magnets to this sort of stuff. So keep your senses open after your experience. There could be much more at play here. And the other thing too, with UFOs in the sky, sometimes they return. So if you have an experience, don't think that's it. Go back out there the next night and keep an eye on the skies. So thank you so much, Michaela. I appreciate it as always. And keep us posted. Maybe we'll have to do another episode here.
Oh my gosh, yes, I definitely will. And great advice at the end. I almost got a little too obsessive there with all of this craziness, but just remember to take it slow and just enjoy the ride, enjoy the journey. It didn't have to, nothing has to be rushed, and everything is going to happen when it's supposed to.
There you go. Enjoy the ride, enjoy the journey, and hopefully you enjoyed this episode. You have been listening to Terra Signals with Justin Bamforth and presented by Normal Paranormal. For more on this show and other topics of high strangeness, please visit normalparanormal.org or visit the program website at terrasignals.com.